Hello and welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. Today is our part 6 and we are going to cover another set of 15 questions from question number 71 to question number 85. These questions will not only increase your cloud understanding but also will boost your passing score for AZ-900 exam. Earlier in this series, a lot has happened and we have already covered 70 questions spread across 5 parts. You don't want to miss these parts as you never know that which question will encounter in your exam. Links for all these parts are given below in the description box below. Friends, if you want the PDF version of the PPT that I am using in part 6, then you have to watch this video carefully until the end. You have to tell me what was the answer for question number 73. Then in question number 80, I discussed about Azure CNAPS. You have to tell me what was Azure CNAPS formerly known as. The answer for the same is also discussed in question number 80. Then in question number 82, 83, 84, you have to tell how many questions are answered as yes. If you give correct answers for each of the following, then I will send you a PDF version of this PPT. So let's start with our part 6. Starting with question number 71. The question says that Azure Site Recovery provides dash for virtual machines. Is it a fault tolerance, disaster recovery, elasticity, or is it high availability? To answer this question, let me take you to the Microsoft site. So here I am on the Microsoft site that talks about site recovery. Here you can see that they have given details about site recovery and what does it mean and how can you use it. Coming a little down, if you scroll down a little, here is a section that talks about virtual machines. Now it talks about that you can set up disaster recovery of Azure virtual machines from primary region to a secondary region. Pay attention, the word here is disaster recovery. Coming back to our PPT, now you know the answer. The correct answer for this question number 71 is disaster recovery. Now quickly move to our question number 72. The question says that your company hosts an accounting application named App 1 that is used by all the customers of the company. App 1 has lower usage during the first 3 weeks of each month and very high usage during the last week of each month. Which benefit of cloud services support cost management for this usage pattern? Now you have to understand few key points here. It talks about that the application has lower usage in the first 3 weeks and it has a higher usage during the last week. Essentially, the question is demanding you to devise or suggest a mechanism which can encounter or take care of this fluctuation in demand. So do you think the answer is high availability or high latency, elasticity or load balancing? We have talked about all these features in our previous parts as well. So go check out our previous parts for more details on each of these terms. To answer this question better, let me take you to the Microsoft again. So here is the site that talks about elastic computing or cloud elasticity. These sites tell you that elastic computing is the ability to quickly expand or decrease computing power, memory, storage resources to meet changing demand without worrying about capacity planning and engineering for peak usage. Now try to relate the question with this definition of elastic computing. The definition is suggesting you that elastic computing does care of increase and decrease in computer processing, memory or storage resources. Now if you come to the PPT again, our question also demands that during the first 3 weeks, it's a low usage and high usage is during the last week. Thus, the correct answer for this question is elasticity. Now let's read out the question number 73. The question says that you have an on-premise network that contains 100 servers. You need to recommend a solution that provides additional resources to your users. The solution must minimize capital and operational expenditure cost. What should you include in the recommendation? Should you include a complete migration to public cloud or an addition data center or a private cloud or a hybrid cloud? Coming to the first option, a complete migration to the public cloud. This is not possible because the question asks that you will still hold on-premise network and you just want to provide additional resource to your users. Thus, complete migration to public cloud is not a correct option. Then additional data center is also not a correct option because the question says that you have to devise a solution that minimize capital expenditure as well. And setting up an additional data center demands a huge capital expenditure. So that's not a correct option either. Setting up a private cloud is also not a correct option because we want to minimize both capital and operational expenditure. Thus, the only correct answer for this question is a hybrid cloud because it's only the hybrid cloud that allows you to keep using your on-premise resources while you can also leverage additional resources on a public cloud. So the correct answer is hybrid cloud. Let's move on to question number 74. So as you can see, you are given some terms here as dynamic scalability, low latency, fault tolerance, and disaster recovery. You have to match these terms with the definitions given on the right hand side. So let's look out the first definition given here. The first definition says a cloud service that remains available after a failure occurs. Now you have to tell which of these four terms actually suits this definition. The correct answer for the first term is fault tolerance. So yes, fault tolerance is the ability of your cloud services to remain available even after failure occurs. The second definition says a cloud service that can be recovered after a failure occurs. Here, the important keyword is recovered. So the correct answer for this definition is disaster recovery. Then we have third definition which says a cloud service that can be accessed quickly from the internet. The keyword here is accessed quickly. And the correct answer for this statement is low latency. Then at the last we have a cloud service that performs quickly when demand increases. So here the important keyword is that your cloud service should perform quickly or scale up quickly when your demand is increasing. Thus, the correct answer for this statement is dynamic scalability. And of course, scalability as a word itself means that you increase something or scale something to a next level. That's why when the demand increases, what you essentially need to do is to scale up your cloud service. Now let's move to our question number 75. In this question, it says that your company has an on-premise network that contains multiple servers. The company plans to reduce the following administrative responsibility. First, the company wants to reduce managing permissions to shared documents, then backing up application data, replace failed server hardware, then we have updating server operating system, and lastly we have managing physical server security. Moving on, the question says that the company plans to migrate servers to Azure virtual machines. You need to identify which administrative responsibility will be eliminated after the planned migration. So keep in mind, you are moving to Azure virtual machines. So now you have to tell that when you are moving your on-premise network that contains multiple servers to our Azure virtual machine, which of the responsibilities will be minimized. So will you be able to minimize replacing failed hardware or backing up application data, managing physical server security, updating server operating system, or managing permission to the shared documents? Now in the previous slides also we have talked many times about Azure Virtual Machine. Azure Virtual Machine is infrastructure as a service. So in infrastructure as a service, what you're doing is that you are not managing the real or underlying hardware yourself. That's the very crux or thought process of infrastructure as a service. Keeping that thought in mind, let's look at the correct answers. The correct answers are replacing failed server hardware. And that's exactly what I said, that whenever you're moving to cloud, IaaS or infrastructure as a service, you are not maintaining any hardware. The hardware is always maintained by the cloud provider. And of course, when the hardware is maintained by them, that essentially means that in case there is a failed or faulty hardware, then they will change it or replace it. So you don't have to worry about that responsibility. The second correct answer is managing physical server security. So now that the cloud provider itself is taking care of the entire data center, which actually includes the physical server security as well. So that's also the responsibility of the cloud provider. You're not doing that. You're not bothered about that. So these two are the correct answers: replacing failed server hardware and managing physical server security. Keep in mind that you still have to do backup of your application data or update server operating system or managing permission to the shared documents. Now let's move to question number 76. It's a yes no kind of question. Let's read the first statement. The first statement says that an Azure subscription can be associated to multiple Azure Active Directory Azure AD tenants. Is it a yes or a no? Let's explore Microsoft site to find the answer. On this page, you can read out it's clearly marked that multiple subscriptions can trust the same Azure AD directory. Each subscription can only trust a single directory. Mind it, it says once again, each subscription can only trust a single directory. However, in our question or statement, it says that Azure subscription can be associated with multiple Azure Active Directory. Thus, the answer for this one is a no. It can trust only and only one Azure AD directory. Coming on to the second statement. This says that you can change Azure Active Directory tenant to which an Azure subscription is associated. Simply putting it, it's just saying that for an Azure subscription, can you change its Azure Active Directory? Once again, coming to the Microsoft side, now if you read this article which says transfer an Azure subscription to a different Azure directory. So you can already see that yes, there is a possibility of transferring Azure subscription to a different Azure AD directory. So here it says that each subscription is associated with a particular Azure directory that we saw in the last statement as well. And then to make it easier, you might want to transfer a subscription to a different Azure directory. This means that yes, there is a possibility to change or to transfer Azure subscription to a different Azure AD directory. Thus, the answer for this one is a yes. Now coming to the third statement, which says that when an Azure subscription expires, the associated Azure Active Directory Azure AD tenant is deleted automatically. So what happens is that when your subscription expires, you actually lose all the resources that are associated with the subscription. However, the Azure AD or the Azure AD directory still remains in Azure, and you can actually associate and manage the directory by using a different subscription. So this means what? That Azure AD tenant is not deleted automatically. So the answer for this one is a no. Moving on with our question number 77. Reading out the first statement, it says a company can extend private cloud by adding its own physical server to the public cloud. Well, this is a wrong statement altogether, because we already know and we have discussed this many times in the previous questions as well, that in public cloud, the ownership of deploying servers, maintaining upkeep of those servers, physical security, all these are the responsibility of the cloud provider. You have no authority or no interference in these kind of server deployments. Thus, the answer for this one is no. Then the second statement says to build a hybrid cloud, you must deploy resources to the public cloud. Now, first understand very briefly what is a hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud is a combination of both public and private cloud. So you have on-premises resources on network, already working servers are there, already working on your on-premise, and then you extend that ability of resources by taking leverage on the public cloud. So thus you can already understand by the bare definition of hybrid cloud that yes, hybrid cloud only comes into existence when you deploy resources to the public cloud. So the answer for this one is yes. Then moving on, the third statement says a public cloud must be disconnected from internet. See, it's not true that private cloud is disconnected from internet. Private cloud can, and I think in fact most of the private cloud are connected to internet. It's just that private cloud means that you are maintaining the servers, security and upkeep of the servers by yourself or maybe by your company. So it doesn't mean that private cloud has to be disconnected from the internet. Thus, the answer for this statement is no. Moving on with question number 78. You have 150 virtual machines hosted on-premise and 100 virtual machines hosted in Azure. Both on-premise virtual machines and Azure virtual machines are connected to each other. Which type of cloud model is this? Is this a hybrid, a private, or a public cloud? I have told you many times that whenever there is an element or resources that are deployed both on premise and on Azure network, then you must always choose hybrid as an answer. And that's exactly what is the correct answer for this question as well. Then moving on with question number 79. You have to identify the type of failure for which an Azure availability zone can be used to protect access to Azure service. What should you identify? Should you go for a physical server failure? Does Azure availability zone protect you from a physical server failure? Or is it an Azure region failure or a storage failure or an Azure data center failure? Coming on to the first option, this is not correct because physical server is not guaranteed by Azure availability zone. In fact, if we are talking about physical server failure, that essentially means that we are talking about on-premise resources. Thus, that is not supported by Azure availability zone. So this is not a correct option. Then an Azure region failure. Now guys, keep in mind that a region, an Azure region can contain multiple availability zones. Now here is the Microsoft side that talks about regions and availability zone. So in here you can read about regions and availability zones as well. If you scroll down a little, you can see that one Azure region, here you can see that one Azure region can contain multiple availability zones. Thus, you cannot protect a region failure by using availability zones. Thus, Azure region failure is not a correct option. Well, storage failure is also not the type of failure which Azure availability zone can be used to protect you. Thus, the only correct option for this question is Azure data center failure. So, an Azure availability zone can be used to protect whenever you encounter an Azure data failure. Friends, it takes a considerable amount of effort to collect Microsoft links and documentation to support each answer. If you appreciate this effort, then don't miss to subscribe to the channel and give me a like. I always long for your comments and feedback, so don't miss on them as well. Now let's move on to question number 80. The question says that evaluate the underlined text to determine if it's correct. Let's read out. One of the benefits of Azure Synapse is that high availability is built into the platform. Now, the instructions are that if underlined text, this is the underlined text, makes the statement correct, then you have to select no change needed. However, if you think that this is not a correct statement, then you have to choose either of these options to make this statement correct. To answer this question correctly, let me tell you that Azure Synapse is a PaaS offering or platform as a service offering. And like any other platform as a service offering, high availability is built into this platform. So this statement is correct. The underlying text Azure Synapse is correct. It has the high availability built into it. So the correct option is no change needed. One very important thing I want to tell you guys that Azure Synapse is evolved from Azure Data Warehouse. So in case in the question it is mentioned Azure Data Warehouse instead of Azure Synapse, then also you have to go for no change needed. So keep in mind Azure Synapse is an evolved version of Azure SQL Data Warehouse. If you want to read more about Azure Synapse, you can drop into this page and read about more on Azure Synapse. You can actually see what I mentioned was that what happened to Azure SQL Warehouse. And it says that Azure Synapse is Azure SQL Data Warehouse evolved. And that's exactly what I was trying to tell you, that in case the question replaces Azure Synapse with Azure SQL Data Warehouse, you don't need to get confused. Always choose the right option, and as you saw, the right option is no change needed. Moving on with question number 81. This one says that your company plans to deploy several custom applications to Azure. The applications will provide invoicing services to the customer of the company. Each application will have several prerequisite applications and services installed. You need to recommend a cloud deployment solution for all the applications. What should you recommend? If you're reading the question in between the lines, then you can see the question is giving you very good amount of hints. It already says that you need to deploy a custom application to Azure. Further, it says that you would need to deploy a lot of prerequisite applications and services as well. So essentially, the question is trying to say that whenever you are deploying this application, you would need a high degree of customization. The only service that provide you a greater control, or should I say the greatest control in terms of customization, is none other than infrastructure as a service. Coming to question number 82, it says that you plan to deploy several Azure virtual machines. You need to ensure that the services running on the virtual machines are available even if a single data center fails. The solution is that you deploy the virtual machines to a scale set. Does this meet the goal? Before answering this question, I would like to see the other variations of these questions that might come in the AZ-900 exam. So you are prepared even if any other variation comes. So let's check out question number 83. The question is exactly the same. However, the solution is that you deploy virtual machines to two or more resource group. The third variation for the same question is question number 84. But this time the solution is that you deploy virtual machines to two or more regions. Coming to the first solution, it says that you want to deploy Azure virtual machines on scale set. To tell you more about ScaleSet actually lets you create and manage a group of load balanced virtual machine. So it has nothing to do with providing you a mechanism in case of failure of a data center. Coming to the resource group is actually a logical collection of Azure resources. For example, virtual machines or storage account or any other Azure resources for that matter. So resource group is kind of a folder, you can visualize that. So where you keep related files inside it. So and definitely resource group are also nothing to do with failures of data center. In the third one, it says that you deploy virtual machines on two or more regions. Definitely, because whenever you're deploying Azure Virtual Machines on multiple regions, it does ensure that the services running on the virtual machines are available even if single data center fails, because now you have virtual machine spread across two or more regions. With that understanding, let's answer question number 82. The obvious answer to question number 82 is no. Then the answer for question number 83 is a no as well. Moving on, we have question number 84, and we understood that whenever you deploy virtual machine on two or more regions, that ensures that your services are running even if single data center fails. So the answer for this one is yes. Moving on with our last question of part 6, we have question number 85. This one says that Azure Cosmos DB is an example of what? Is it a PaaS offering, infrastructure as a service or IaaS offering? Is it a serverless or is it a software as a service? To answer this question, let me take you to the Microsoft site. So coming to the Microsoft documentation, it talks about security in Azure Cosmos DB. So if you scroll down a little here under this heading, which says, how do I secure my database? Let's read one of the lines here. It says that if you choose a PaaS cloud database provider such as Azure Cosmos DB. Now I'm sure that just by reading this line, you can decide that Azure Cosmos DB is a PaaS offering. Thus, the correct answer for question number 85 is platform as a service. Definitely, Cosmos DB is platform as a service. I hope you liked all the 15 questions that we covered in part 6 of our AZ-900 real exam question and answer series. If so, appreciate my efforts by giving me a like and a subscribe. If this video has added any value in your learning, a like and subscribe is highly appreciated. Share this video in your family and friends to spread and expand their learning. Your comments and feedback give me a chance to interact with you, and I look forward for them. We will meet again in our next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.